Over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of interviewing and highlighting some truly interesting people. Everyone who is anyone, both the famous and the infamous, from presidents and their first ladies to kings and queens, movie stars and pop stars, captains of industry, heads of state, sports personalities, innovative entrepreneurs, and some pretty fascinating everyday people. Today, I'm proud to introduce you to Dr. Stephanie Bird, a science and engineering ethics education and policy consultant who has been making strides as a woman in a typically male dominated STEM field for nearly 4 decades. Dr. Bird, it is a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me as well.
Fantastic. I see that your professional interests combine science, engineering, and ethics. That's a fairly unusual field. So tell us how you got into that.
Well, it's actually a long, evolving career. I can actually blame or credit my mother and my high school biology teacher for very much leading me in these directions. My mother was always one to highlight a personal responsibility and not judging other people. And she was really one to focus on ethical issues, although I didn't actually know it as that at the time. And in my high school biology class, I had such a wonderful teacher, Barbara Hopper. And she not only was a great teacher, but also encouraged me and helped me to enter UCLA. Neither of my parents went to college, and so I was the first of my family to do that,
Mhm.
and had a wonderful experience there. But initially, I thought I would start off and pursue nursing, which was the profession of one of my aunts, one of my favorite aunts, of which there are many. And um, After about the first year, I would say within the first year, I happened to take an ethics class because it was called Society and Morals, and it was one that my mother would have piqued my interest in. So I thought I would audit that, and I took the class, and that was just the beginning of everything because I became both a zoology major,
Mhm.
and a philosophy major. So I had two majors, which was challenging but interesting at the time, and very much at that time one that people weren't never thought about putting those two things together. So it was always a how did you ever do this? But it was really very much the case, and I got so much out of doing both of those careers. But when it came time to think about graduate school, which I did because I had a wonderful mentor who was also my boss, who encouraged me to uh, plan to go to college. I'd planned to be a travel agent and pay off my loans. And he said, no, you should go to graduate school, which actually he wanted me to go to medical school. I said, no, I can't bear to see people in pain. So I will pursue more science. I really do like the science. And it was very clear that to me, after giving it some brief thought, that I was going to pursue a graduate degree in neuroscience, which I did. And I went to Yale to do that. There was an opening for a position in the neurosciences research program, which was an off campus branch of MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And that was really a think tank for neuroscientists, no pun intended, a good place to think about how the various fields of neuroscience come together and complement each other.
Stephanie, help us to understand what is the intersectionality between science, engineering, and ethics for those of our audience who is having trouble making a little of the connection.
Right. Well, I think that often, and it's really become much more formalized now, we think of science and engineering as being both the theoretical and the practical applications of science and technology to our lives, but we rarely recognize the ethical issues that are associated with both the science and the engineering. And in fact, um, when colleague and I started the journal Science and Engineering Ethics, it was very unusual to do anything like that at the time. It really came out of thinking about, well, what are the ethical issues that arise? And some of them are associated with the practice of science. So things like fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. Those are clearly egregious sins in the scientific community. And these are common problems, but in addition, there are issues associated with recognizing the contributions that other people make and giving credit to them for their contributions. Things like conflicts of interest as one decides what to recommend or to suggest to patients or to others. If one has a financial interest, it's often recognized as an overriding, potentially negative or irrelevant factor in deciding what's really the appropriate thing to do or the appropriate device to be using or drug to prescribe.
I know there's a reference in pop culture that I actually enjoy. It's my very favorite movie. I've watched it probably 150 times, the original Jurassic Park, and there's a line in there
Yes.
where the one of the main scientists, Ian Malcolm, says, "Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should." And it seems to me that that is literally what you are speaking of in some respects with the combination of science, engineering, and ethics, making sure you
Exactly.
answer that question, is this something we should be doing?
That's right. That's right. And in fact, engineers have really been leaders in this area because they developed a code of ethics, and they have about 100 years ago. And at that time, the paramountcy principle was one that was highlighted, and that is that engineers should hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. So it was really making explicit what presumably everyone assumes, that is, that engineers and scientists would think about the larger impacts of their work on the larger public. And more recently, in about the 1940s, the scientific community also developed a scientist's code of ethics, which is a somewhat more elaborate, but again, not in so many words, but emphasizes holding paramount public welfare.
It just makes me think to myself, what areas of science do you think are especially exciting and or ethically problematic or challenging, since you have done so much in terms of the research of this area?
Well, in addition to neuroscience, I think that the work that's being done on interspecies communication, which perhaps isn't totally outside of neuroscience, that's really a fascinating area. And also the work that's being done to really understand and to communicate more clearly within our society, the progress that we've been making, I think, more recently in trying to get people to understand, for example, implicit bias, for example, how it is that we communicate or don't communicate well, and our interactions with the environment. I think those are really important areas of research and of where the science and society come together and have a lot of implications. And of course, one of the really exciting areas is astrophysics and dark and energy and dark matter, and it'll be great to see what comes out of those things, even though they seem so remote from us now.
In some respects, we all have implicit bias. The challenge is not allowing that implicit bias to impact on our decision making and our relationships with other people.
Definitely. And I think getting a better understanding of how it is that those biases are there and
Yes.
where they come from, and at least gives us a fighting chance in terms of overcoming those problems. And I think that's one of the things that's been most rewarding about teaching is seeing on the faces of students their sudden comprehension of the concept that you're trying to get across. And as you say, it's very rewarding to see people recognize their own implicit biases in certain circumstances.
Well, we talked about your professional accomplishments. Let's talk personal. What are you proudest of, Stephanie?
Well, I think that one of the things that I'm especially happy with is that I continuously try and make an effort to stop and smell the roses, to recognize the beauty of the world that's around me. I so much value and treasure my friendships and my relationships that I've made over the years with so many different people, and they're so enriching and fulfilling to me. So I very much value that. I also so much value what my mother taught me about um, taking personal responsibility for my actions and for not judging other people. I think that one of the things that I often get into discussions with people about also, and um, find it interesting and surprising perhaps, is how much I recognize how the extent to which good luck and good fortune have really fallen on me. And that so much of my being able to accomplish things comes out of being born at this time in this country with good health, as opposed to centuries ago, or in a different place even now, to having the contacts and the encouragement from my parents to go to college, and the people that I've met along the way that have been willing to reach out and help me. Those are so much that I really value, and that I feel have made my life a fuller life, which is, I think, what's really important and fortunate for me.
You and I have so many things in common, and I read that one of them is you really do enjoy giving back to the community.
Being part of society is an important part of being human. As a member of society, we contribute whatever it is we can bring. I think that, as for the scientific community, sometimes we think about ourselves as being apart from society instead of a part of society.
Mhm.
But as a part of society, we all have our own things to bring to it. And of course, I've been very blessed to be able to work with young women, to encourage them and to mentor them in a variety of different ways, not only young women in science, but also young women just not sure where they want to go and what they want to do with their lives. So mentoring has been one of the things that I've especially enjoyed doing.
You know, just listening to you, it reminds me of my very favorite Mahatma Gandhi quote: the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And your work, especially with young women, is extremely inspiring. So I'll ask you, for the young women who are interested in the STEM areas, what would you advise young girls who are interested in pursuing a STEM career?
Well, I think that if they're interested in pursuing careers in STEM, that they should seek out mentors, more than one mentor, because each of them brings their own special experience, their own special perspective to it. And that they should um, make sure that when they listen to, and they should listen carefully to, feedback that they get along the way from their mentors, that they also evaluate the mentor's advice in their own context. Because a mentor can give you his or her um, view of what would be a good choice for you, what makes sense, what kinds of things would be appropriate for you. But it's only you that can decide whether that really fits into your larger value system, the things that you care about, and where you want to make your contribution to society.
I think it's just the greatest piece of advice, and a really great way for us to end a very thought provoking and interesting time together. Dr. Stephanie Bird, I have had a great time getting to know you and getting to know more about your passion. Thank you so very much.
And you're more than welcome. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it as well. Thank you.